Yeah, but I think this is the one. Damn, bro, my back hurt.
Yeah, there we go. It popped up for real now.
Yeah.
Oh, we're live. Okay. I think this is for real now. Let's see. Let's see if the thumbnail is right. Okay, the thumbnail is right. I'm feeling good about it. Okay, I think we're live. Um, so if you guys are here, welcome. I'm about to put the Zoom on full screen, but I still want to see what the people in the chat got to say. Let's see how many people we got right now. We have 3 viewers right now, I believe.
Yup.
This Lakers game's getting close. The Warriors made a little comeback here.
Word, I peeped that. Like, what? They were down
Seven-
15.
They're on a 17-2 run over the last 4 minutes.
That's crazy.
So right now I'm gonna get the phone number ready for Google Voice. So guys, what we're gonna do right here in this chat is that we're going to take callers in, but we're also gonna talk about the game that just happened, the Nets and the Bucks, how we feel about the Nets. I know that Jack is not a very fond guy of the Nets. He doesn't like that James Harden is on his team. He despises it. And I,
You
I
just
try
like
to
to make things up.
I try to tell him multiple times, man, listen, stop despising it. Stop despising it.
You like to make things up.
I try to tell him multiple times, man, listen, stop despising it. Stop despising it. Okay. So I think we're ready to go. We can talk about what happened. I have the Lakers game and the Warriors game right here. So what did you
Yeah,
guys think about the Nets game? How did you guys feel about it? I know you guys are both diehard Nets fans. Since you guys have always been fans of basketball, I just became a Nets fan a week ago. So what do you guys? So what do you guys feel about it? How do you guys feel
hey,
about James Harden?
hey, man, I won't lie. James Harden shut me up, bro. I'll be for real. In the offseason, when they were talking about, oh, let's match up James Harden with KD and Kyrie, I was like, how is that going to work? We have yet to see KD and Kyrie hit the floor together. What's the point of adding a third superstar before we even know how the 2 superstars we already got we're gonna, play together? Because there was still controversy between KD and Kyrie, but I think now that James Harden has taken that point guard position, it's way better. I'm not gonna say this team is better without Kyrie at point guard. I'd say they're kind of equal just because KD seems to be playing the same way, with or without with either one at the point. So hey, man, I think the best thing to come out of it was just the Nets win up against Eastern Conference front runner.
Yeah, and I mean, Joel, you know as well as anybody, I was skeptical at first just because, like we've been saying all along, coming into this season, there were so many question marks about how Kyrie and KD would fit together. And so far in the sample size we've seen from them, they worked it out. It was a small sample size, and we still have yet to see Kyrie mesh with this group. But I told you that, it would take sacrifice. And if they did sacrifice, I could definitely see it working. Obviously, they're 3 of the greatest players in the world. But, it's difficult when you have 3 players who all of them, their best skill is they're all the better as isolation scorers. But now you see what the roles they're taking. I love the way James Harden has come in and played as almost like a pure point guard. And I don't think we've seen this type of play from him since his early Rockets years. I think he was forced in those late Rockets years into being less efficient than he is as a player. And now coming into this situation with KD and eventually Kyrie and a guy who I said to you might benefit most from this situation, Joe Harris, who's been playing incredible the last 2 nights. There's so many weapons around him playing that pure point guard role. He's getting to do things that he couldn't do in Houston the last 2 years, especially surrounded by Russell Westbrook and Clint Capella and guys who couldn't shoot as well. So I love what I've seen through 2 games. I'm not nervous, but I'm interested to see how they integrate Kyrie into this offense, how the rotations work out. I still don't think this team is done, though. I think Sean Marks is going to go out maybe on the buyout market and pick up another big man, and maybe, two other perimeter type defenders. A couple of former Nets come to mind: Rondae Hollis-Jefferson, Damari Carroll, Amon Shumpert, and then, any big men that you could find on the market. But I've been very impressed so far. I give credit to Steve Nash with no practices, putting together the offense that he's put together with this group, and it's been pretty seamless. So I've been very impressed so far.
I'm glad that you've been impressed, and I'm just going to start with this. Sorry.
I'm undefeated, never lost.
Especially when we talk about the debate between James Harden and if he should go to Brooklyn. You didn't want this to happen. And I told you back then that you were delusional. It's James Harden. Trade Jared Allen. Trade Caris LeVert. Trade whoever outside of Kyrie and KD. And even later on, it was, if you wanted to trade a Kyrie, it was cool. James Harden, when we texted that day and we were arguing about it, we argued a lot about it. And we argued about him being a facilitator. And you told me he wasn't a facilitator, man. And I said, you're crazy. I said, you're crazy.
Hold on. Before you go any further, let me clarify, because you're taking that out of context. I said that he has not been a facilitator the last few years in Houston because he's had to be that isolation scorer. His isolation rate was at 40%, which is 20% higher than anybody else in the league last year. So I wasn't saying that he couldn't facilitate. I'm just saying he wasn't playing as a facilitator the last 2 years. He had done it earlier in his career, so I didn't doubt that he could. And I told you he definitely had the ability to do that. He's a great passer, and now he's shown it early on in 2 games as a net that he can certainly be that facilitator. I never doubted that he could, but he just needed to show that willingness to. And I mean, he's shown that and more. And I was very encouraged by his comments in the press conferences and now his actions on the court, in that he really just wants to win a championship. And that was something that, anybody could say it, but it's about going out and your actions speaking for it. And he's shown that I think he really is all about winning a championship and will sacrifice whatever for that. And it's helped him because now his efficiency has gotten a lot better. I feel like.
Jack, I'll say this. Look, I have the messages, man. I ain't going to expose you. I ain't going to go ahead and expose you. You said specifically he's not a facilitator, and I said, you're crazy, bro. Are you serious?
Because he wasn't at the time.
No, I said he always was. And I stand by that, because I said his game is not one-dimensional. Yes, he's a fantastic ISO scorer, but that percentage, about 40% ISO, is a little bit deceptive, because I could remember every single time I watched him in Houston is a pick and roll situation. That's just me. Even within Mike D'Antoni's offense, it was always a pick and roll situation. And to be a pick and roll ball handler, time in and time out, you have to be a great facilitator. And he showed that, whether it was lobbing a Clint Capella, Kenneth Faried, whoever it was, he was always fantastic in doing so.
That's fair enough. When I think facilitator, I was thinking more of it in terms of like distributing the ball, if that makes sense. So, I feel like we have a little bit different definitions of facilitator, but I meant it in no disrespectful way. It wasn't me saying like, he can't pass the ball or whatever. I think that's one of the biggest myths in basketball. And I think the same thing about people thinking what kind of defender he is. But, he's shown it in Brooklyn. He can certainly do it. And it helps that he has guys like Kevin Durant. He has a guy like Joe Harris. Even Bruce Brown and Landry Shamet have been shooting the ball really well in these last 2 games. So, I know on paper, those guys in Houston looked like they were, they had a couple of good shooters, but they never had shooters as good as this Nets team is going to have. And he's going to be able to put on full display how good of a passer he is. And you've seen it so far. I understand the turnover numbers have been high, but probably 5 of those a night have been on lobs to DeAndre Jordan, where it almost feels like he still thinks he's throwing them to Christian Wood, and DeAndre Jordan does not have that bounce anymore. So once they get a couple of practices, a couple of games in, and they get that flow, I think those turnover numbers will definitely be cut down.
So right now, we have 2 viewers that are viewing our stuff that commented, and they said, from Shayef, talk about the Chargers and the Franklin. The Blazers have been just okay. What do you guys make of it so far? So we'll answer the first one. Talk about the Chargers, talk about Justin Herbert and Brandon Staley. Well, Justin Herbert, he's phenomenal. And I think Brandon Staley was a great hire, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I know a lot of people are going to question his resume, whether another head coach should have got hired. But at the end of the day, the same thing happened with Cliff Kingsbury when he got hired by the Cardinals. And he's been pretty good with the Cardinals. I could say. I know people bash him a lot, but I think he's been pretty good with the Cardinals so far. So I think Brandon Staley deserved the job no matter his resume or no matter if you think somebody else deserved it over him. I'm excited to see the Chargers this season. Well, next season.
Yeah, and we've talked about the Chargers so much on the podcast, and I'm super excited about the talent they have, and I wanted them to bring in a defensive head coach because I think Justin Herbert's already on the right path with an offense full of great weapons. He has Pep Hamilton still at that quarterback coach position. I'm interested to see who they bring in as the offensive coordinator to lead that offensive unit, but I thought the defense needed more work. I think they have a lot of talent on that side of the ball, but they were just mismanaged and didn't live up to their potential. So now getting a bunch of that talent back and still having some cap space to work with, I believe, this offseason, it's going to be really interesting to see what Staley can come in and do with that group that, I understand he had a lot of talent in Los Angeles, but he also got the most out of that talent week in and week out. So I can't wait to see what he does with that defensive unit because you look at the Chargers this past year, they had the most one-score losses in the league. You had even a slightly better defense, and at least half of those are wins, and you're talking about a team that's in the playoff hunt towards the end of the year.
Yeah, I think the Chargers definitely had the most, pleasing head coaching vacancy, and I don't think anything can tell me otherwise. You got Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen. I don't want to say a stellar defense, but at least on paper that defense was somewhat above average. But I think the main thing you have to look at is Justin Herbert, and the dude is just a purebred gunslinger. He's something that like we don't get to see every so often. So I think that was a great hire, and I'm really excited to see the Chargers as well. But I do agree with the defensive side of the issues because I see kind of like a Deshaun Watson kind of situation, where he has to win in a shootout every game. You give him a good defense and he can just play, his game, and you don't have to worry about, it being a shootout. Because you already know, Justin Herbert's prepared for a shootout every game because, that's the kind of football player he is. But I think you get him a good defense and, the shootout question kind of, goes out the window and you just let the offense speak for itself. But nonetheless, I think the Chargers are an amazing team, and in the future there'll be some fun to watch.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And then the next question is, what do we think about the Blazers? What do we think about them being just okay so far? I mean, for me personally, I haven't been watching the Blazers so much, and I'm kind of annoyed when I do watch the Blazers because I feel like whenever I watch them, they're on NBA TV, and I don't know why they're on NBA TV so much. I wish they would have gave more airtime to other teams. But regardless, when I watch the Blazers, a couple things pop out to me. One is that Nurkic has not been playing that good. He got hurt as well, so now you got Ennis slotting in at the center, and I think to this point, the trade for Robert Covington has been a bust. Like Robert Covington is not a great on-ball defender. He's a very inconsistent shooter. And this is what I saw in Houston. He was a very streaky player. He got you annoyed because you know what he's capable of. But I think this is a problem with players like Robert Covington. Since he played in a small market like Minnesota, and then before he played like on those trash Philly teams, people started recognizing him for like an all-world defender because he made an all-NBA defensive team. And you don't watch Minnesota on national television, so you just take people's word for it. But when you actually watch Robert Covington, especially when I watched him on the Rockets, he's not that player. He's not this defensive stopper. He's not this like Marcus Smart type of player. He's a great help defender, but that's about it.
Yeah, I mean, I was super high coming into the year on the Blazers. I thought that they were going to be a top 3 seed in the West, and I still think they can be. This Nurkic injury definitely hurts them a lot because even though he was struggling, I've never been a huge fan of Cantor just because his defense is so weak. He's great offensively, And I said last year when he was with the Celtics, if you could combine him and Daniel Tice, you have a top center in the league. But he struggles so much defensively, and I think that's going to hurt them, especially considering how offensively top heavy they are. They need help on that defensive side of the ball. I do like seeing Gary Trent get some more minutes. That was one of the things I talked about, I think 2 weeks ago when we recorded and talked about the Blazers. I didn't think that Gary Trent was playing enough. He's probably one of the best defenders on the roster, so I think he should be getting more minutes. And just the combinations have been a little bit weird. Derek Jones Jr. and Robert Covington on the floor at the same time hasn't really worked out because they do very similar things. Covington hasn't been great since coming over. And, I think they just need to gel a little bit. Defensively, they need to pick it up. But, it's tough because how do you get better defensively throughout the course of a season? I feel like they needed to improve that defense this past offseason, and they didn't really do that. I guess Covington was that move that you thought would bolster the defense, and he hasn't really done that.
I think the start the Blazers had this season is already light years ahead than the start they had last season, because look at the start they had last season. Awful. Everyone was so surprised. It was like the worst team, in the league. And even, going into the bubble, they had to fight their way back into the playoff push. I'm not too concerned with the Blazers just yet. Still very early in the season. Obviously, losing Nurkic is, a pain, but you still got Damian Lillard, who is one of, if not probably the best point guard you can argue in the league. And you give him his, 1-2 punch in CJ McCollum. I think, that backcourt is good enough to, sustain the offense, and, you don't have to worry about that. Obviously, the defensive woes, something you're going to have to worry about. But in terms of the start to this season, I still think the Blazers should have a lot of hope. If they're able to make the playoffs after, what they saw the first season, then right now should be of no issue. And I don't think it matters whether you go in as like an 8 seed or a 6 seed or whatever it is. If you get a healthy team in the playoffs, you will make the proper run that your team is destined to make.
That's a great answer, because I think going into this season, we had different expectations for them because Dame was so phenomenal in the bubble. But you put it into perspective, because last year they were horrible to start the year. And this year they look like they're going to be a lock for the playoffs. Last year, if it wasn't for the bubble, they probably would have never made it. So I think that is a great point, because I'm thinking about just this season, and that's why I'm so pessimistic. But right now, we got 15 people watching, and we haven't had a caller yet. The number is pinned. We got to get a caller in. If you guys want to debate us, you guys want to talk about whatever you guys want to talk about, call in. And we got 16 people in here. So, guys, smash that like button and share this with your friends, man. I shared it on Instagram already, on Twitter. We're trying to get this live stream popping so we can have a lot of difference of opinions and everybody giving their take on things. Will said, this guy just, the initials just said, will the Raptors make a comeback, a top 8 seed or not? For me, I think they will. When you look at the Raptors, most of their games have been decided by a very close margin. Their losses have not been bad losses, and they've been kind of on a winning streak right now. So because of that, there is no reason for me to doubt that the Raptors will miss the playoffs. I think they're just starting to find their groove again. And people are forgetting that they went from playing to Toronto to now playing in Tampa Bay. So that was a big switch for them. It wasn't like it was nothing. So I actually do believe in the Raptors making the playoffs this season.
Yeah, and let me just say about the last one, I still think the Trailblazers are going to be a lock for the playoffs. I just think they have a cap to what they can do in the playoffs just because of that defense. But talking about the Raptors, I do think they're going to end up making the playoffs in the Eastern Conference, especially considering the playing games. So all you have to be is a top 10 seed to give yourself a shot in those playing games to make it. But when you look at this Eastern Conference playoff picture, I definitely don't see the Cavaliers hanging on to their playoff spot. The Hawks, they have not looked good when I've seen them. That Trae Young is their entire offense. It's been pretty ugly to watch, to be totally honest. I liked what they did this offseason. I thought it was a little bit, without direction, but they brought in a lot of talent, and I don't think they've done well with it. So the Raptors on a 3-game winning streak, I feel like they're only scratching the surface. Nick Nurse is a great head coach. I think he'll figure it out. I don't know how far they can go in the playoffs, but I do trust them to end up making their way back in the Eastern Conference.
Not to mention, so far in this season, a majority of their games that they've played already have been against the Western Conference, which, they won't have to worry about once they get into the playoffs. So, I mean, yeah, it's Fred VanVleet, Kyle Lowry, Pascal Siakam. I think that trio is still definitely good enough to, get a push, because just like just like the game of basketball is a game of runs, the season is, a game of runs, let's say. So, if they get hot midway through the season, they can definitely get, into the playoffs. Whether it's an 8 seed or a 7 seed, doesn't really matter. Like I said before, once you get into the playoffs, your roster, your team will get you as far, as gotten you just like in the regular season. I mean, last year, the bubble, I don't want to say, there was an asterisk on the bubble, but I mean, who expected the Miami Heat to get as far as they did? Not too many people. So I think this season's definitely, I wouldn't say they're a lock just yet. I do agree, with the fact that I don't know about the Hawks holding on to their playoff picture, but I mean, there's so many teams that are wide open in the East. Basically, if you're not a top 4 team in the East, your playoff spot right now is very much in danger. So I think the Raptors definitely have enough pieces to capitalize on that.
And honestly, the Raptors right now, Chris Boucher, who plays for them, he's playing phenomenal. Like, he's probably their most important player right now. That's somebody that nobody expected to start stepping up.
He should be in most improved talks for sure. I know obviously I would have Christian Wood above him and probably Jeremy Grant as well, but he should be right up there in the top 5 most improved player conversation this year.
Yeah, no
He's been
doubt.
averaging like 20 points for the past like 6 games or something. He's on fire.
Yeah, like this most improved player class is way better than last year's. Like this year, you have Chris Boucher, Christian Wood, Jeremy Grant is in the running. Who knew that Jeremy Grant was going to score this much? Like, I didn't think he was going to do that at all. I thought he was going to score like a smooth 14, 15 points per game. That's about it.
Yeah, I don't think anybody expected this from him. I kind of thought that he was just a great 3-and-D player, a perfect role player for a championship team. I still don't think he could be a number 1 option, but he could be like a very good number 3, probably a solid number 2 for a team that really wants to compete. So, he bet on himself, and this is the positive. Fred VanVleet said it, and he got his bag, and now Jeremy Grant did the same thing, went to a team where you get a bigger role, and he's taken every advantage of it.
Yeah, there's a reason why he wanted out of Denver, because he knew he had untapped potential. And, like you said, Jack, he bet on himself, and it worked out for him. So I'm really happy for him. Before Seton Hall, I was a huge Syracuse fan. So watching him develop from then to now is pretty cool.
So I see right now, Leo is in the comments. Leo Jackson, he's a usually he calls in all the time when he watches our stuff. So come on, man. Leo, we know you got to call in. You got a couple questions about this James Harden trade. Don't be afraid to call in, man. We appreciate you for supporting and being in the chat. And right now, Robert Saleh, that's his burner name. It's the first time. This is the first time that I'm acknowledging that he's in the comments. It's not because I was ignoring you. It's because we've been talking this entire time. I'm not going to talk over Jack or Ronnie. Okay, Robert Saleh's question is, what should we do with Sam Darnold? And this is a great question because all of us here, we are Jets fans. That's our team. We're Jets fans. So I'm guessing we all have a difference of opinion. We might go back and forth over this one. Man, I'm on the fence about this one. I love Zach Wilson. I like Justin Fields, even though I have a lot of questions about Justin Fields. We got a question right now. We got a caller right now. Let's see who's calling in.
Ooh.
Except
Also,
press
I want
1.
to say,
To send a voicemail, press 2.
Hello?
Hey, this Leo.
Hey, what's up, Leo?
It's been a while to talk to y'all, to be real with you.
Yeah, man, we haven't been live and we haven't taken callers in a while, man. How you been?
Good.
So what's your question?
Oh, beside the Texans and the Eagles, because we don't know who the coach is right now, and the Lions, they say Dan Campbell, but we're fully unsure. Rank highest to lowest, the coach hire.
Rank the highest to lowest. That's a good one. Let me see.
So are we talking which like teams coaching vacancy is like the most appealing?
I think it's best hire to worst hire so far.
So
is the
far,
way
that's
I
what
do
we're
it.
talking about?
All right.
Best hire to worst house, best hire to worst hire so far. That's what you're talking about?
Like highest to lowest or lowest to highest. It depends what you order.
Okay, so who got hired so far? It was Brandon Staley to the Chargers, Robert Saleh to the Jets,
Arthur Smith to the Falcons.
Arthur Smith to the Falcons. Yeah.
Arthur Smith to the Falcons, and who else? Oh, Urban Meyer to the Jaguars. I keep forgetting
Mhm.
about him.
There's one more, I think. Oh no, that was Dan Campbell to the Lions, but
Campbell to
that's
the Lions.
unconfirmed.
Yeah.
Okay, so for me, look, I'm a homer. I'm gonna go with Robert Saleh to the Jets. I felt like the Jets needed a culture change, and he's the right guy. My second, Urban Meyer to the Jags. I think his first couple of drafts are going to be overpowered. He's going to bring in so many good players from college, and the Jaguars are in perfect position to succeed. My third will be Brandon Staley because I think he will make that Chargers defense a very formidable unit. And then my fourth coaching hire would probably be who's the last one that
Did you say Arthur Smith?
Yeah, Arthur Smith, because I think even though he's a great offensive coach and play caller, the Falcons struggle defensively. So I don't know if they'll be able to win games if they can't play any defense.
This is tough. I think they're all good hires. Maybe I'm going to sound like a bit of a homer. I think Robert Saleh was the best hire, and maybe it's because I'm a Jet fan and I've seen the dysfunction, and I know, like Joel said, how badly we need that culture change, and I think he is the best guy out there to do that. On top of that, he's brought in a great staff so far, and I love how they attacked it. They didn't wait for anybody else. I think the only hire that happened before them was Urban Meyer to the Jags, and I don't even think Saleh was involved with the Jaguars. So I like that they went out and they got their guy. They didn't wait to see what anybody else did, like last time when they wound up with Gase. I love the way the Jets handled this situation. Next, I think I'm going to go with Brandon Staley. He's done a great job with the Rams defensive unit. I think the Chargers needed a defensive mind to come in and fix up that defense. So I like that move, especially for Justin Herbert. I think they could be in the playoff mix next year. At 3, this could go either way. I'm gonna put Arthur Smith at 3, but I'm skeptical about both of these moves just because I think the Falcons, I heard, are losing their defensive coordinator, who I thought did a nice job in the second half of the year after they made the firing of their head coach. I thought their defense looked a lot more formidable in the second half of the season. So I want to see what kind of staff they build around Arthur Smith. He obviously did a great job in Tennessee, but what is he going to do without a Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill, AJ Brown, Corey Davis? That offense was loaded. So I want to see what he can do with a little bit less in Atlanta. And for the Jaguars with Urban Meyer, I loved Urban Meyer as a college coach. He did incredible things wherever he went, and he changed every program he was at. And I think he's going to come in and do good things with the Jags just because of the situation they're in this offseason. So much cap, so many picks, Trevor Lawrence. But I want to see him make that leap to the NFL. It's so much different going from you could go to any home in America and tell somebody's mother that you're going to take care of their kid and you get all the top recruits, as opposed to the NFL where, you really have to work to build a roster and build that rapport with guys. So I want to see how he makes that transition. But I do think it's going to work out for the Jaguars. So I think all the hires were very good so far.
Well, we'll go 3 for 3 on the Robert Saleh talk. I think he's definitely the best coaching hire. I mean,
And we
we've
got
been
him in
watching
the chat
Jets.
right now.
Exactly. So, listen, man, culture changer, to say the least. I mean, I was kind of skeptical at first because I didn't know how, I didn't like the idea of a defensive coordinator coming into, a head coaching job. It's kind of iffy to me. But nonetheless, the man knows how to talk to players. He knows how to, get the energy going. He's a man of the people. And I think, coming from Adam Gase, that's something you need. So I think that was the perfect hire for the Jets. I really don't think the Jets should have, gone in on anyone else. I mean, obviously you had to get Adam Gase out of there, but Robert Saleh was definitely the best hire. Second for me, I'm gonna have to give it to Arthur Smith because of the way he was able to develop Ryan Tannehill. I think now you give him, one of those top 3 quarterbacks in the draft. Obviously not Trevor Lawrence, but you give him either Zach Wilson or Justin Fields, and then you pair him up with Calvin Ridley and then Julio Jones. I think that's a perfect fit. It's perfect development for that young quarterback. So I'll give it to Arthur Smith right there. Kind of in last, I guess. It's kind of a tie for both Urban Meyer and Brandon Staley. I'll give the nudge to Brandon Staley just because, I mean, it's impossible to mess up that Chargers job. I mean, you have such a loaded offense. Number one thing you got to worry about is that defense. But I think, that's a couple things with that you can fix, in the draft and then with some cap space. Urban Meyer, I'm never too high on college coaches kind of getting to the NFL. I mean, even Nick Saban failed. And if you're going to tell me that Nick Saban, failing in the NFL is just as good, or if not, kind of less than Urban Meyer, then, I don't know what to tell you. So, but I think it's a similar situation to the Chargers. You can't really mess up the Jaguars' job. You take Trevor Lawrence and you let him do his thing. You got James Robinson and, a couple of young receivers with that. Obviously, you lost that AFC Championship caliber defense, a while ago. But once again, that's something you could rebuild in the draft. And I'm gonna go out and say as well, agreeing with Jack, all the hires were great, but if I had to put them in order, that's what it'd be.
Not bad, not bad, not bad. Now, another question is, since Jack, you're a Brooklyn Nets fan, and Joel, you're a James Harden fan, which I guess y'all want me to hear from me for that, but you think this trade is like the Brooklyn Nets 2.0, which I think the 2.0 trade, well, I meant like the Paul Pierce KG trade.
That it's not this at all.
Yeah, it's
and KG were never on the level of James Harden. Never. At one point, KG maybe was when he was an MVP, but when they got traded to Brooklyn, they weren't at all. And Brooklyn never, okay, I was talking about this with my cousin. When Brooklyn made that trade, everybody hyped it up, but in hindsight, when you look at it, they weren't a super team. They had a bunch of all-star caliber players, but there was not one MVP level player. Darren Williams was an all-star. Joe Johnson was an all-star. Brook Lopez was an okay offensive center, but he couldn't play defense at that time, and he wasn't a very good rebounder. And KG and Paul Pierce were past their prime. So it was just a bunch of guys that used to be very good and some that are very good on one team. This Brooklyn Nets team are 3 players in their prime right now that are MVP caliber players. They're going to succeed no matter what. And I'll go as far as saying right now, on January 19th at 12:21 a.m. Eastern time, that they will win the championship this season.
I'll go next. I don't think, and again, I was skeptical about this deal from the beginning of the rumors, but I don't think that these two deals are equivalent at all. Just because, like Joel said, that team with Paul Pierce and KG was nowhere near this Brooklyn Nets team. And when you look at that time in the NBA, I can tell you at least the Miami Heat were head and shoulders above the Nets at that time. The Nets had no chance of beating that team with LeBron in his prime, Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh still playing at the level they were playing at. I mean, there was just no chance. It was a useless fight. So now you fast forward to this deal, getting, even before James Harden, the Nets were probably a top 5 favorite in the league. Getting James Harden now, if it works out, they're, if not the favorites, they're at least neck and neck with the Lakers, depending on who you ask. But I don't think there's any other team in the league you would put above the Nets. The Lakers are the only team I would have on the Nets level right now. So this really gives them a chance to win a championship, whereas I don't think that other deal did that. And the other thing I think is important is Sean Marks being the GM. Billy King was not Sean Marks, and Sean Marks took this franchise from the depths already once. So worst case scenario, if everything blows up and all 3 of these guys leave, you have a guy in charge that I trust to bring you back because he did it once already. And you trust that bringing in James Harden, along with having Kyrie Irving, you're going to get those guys to commit to Brooklyn long-term. I think that was the idea behind going out and getting James Harden, to be almost more bait. Say Kyrie goes off the deep end, which I don't think he will. You have James Harden to say, okay, KD, we got your guy. You guys stay here in Brooklyn long-term and play out these next 8 years where we don't have those picks. So I don't think they're equivalent, although people may think that just looking at it on the surface.
Yeah, I'm not going to repeat. Y'all basically took the words out of my mouth. The only way you can kind of compare these 2 trades is the fact that they mortgaged their future for the present. And that's not an issue. all right, you gave up your first round picks for the next 4 years. Okay, but these guys are here. Well, at least Katie and Kyrie are here for the next three. If you win a championship within those next three, I can deal I can deal with not having a first round, pick. I got a ring on my finger. What do I care? And Jack, you brought up, the man who's done it the most, Sean Marks. Listen, we got rid of our future, and he was able to get us D'Angelo Russell, Rondé Hollis Jefferson, that whole team that basically started, the Nets' rise. Because without that team, we don't get KD, we don't get Kyrie. Brooklyn isn't on the map to get any good free agents. I remember the summer before that free agency, I was hoping for maybe a Paul George, Tobias Harris. I never thought we'd be able to get KD and Kyrie together. But I mean, Sean Marks, really, he's that dude, man. He knows how to fix up a team real quick.
Yeah, and I remember when they were in the midst of that rebuild, I forget exactly who it was. I could pull up the quote, but a former player said that once the Nets start winning, they will get anybody they want because of the culture they've built. And Sean Marks delivered on that. They really have built something in that building that guys want to be a part of. And now you have three of the league's biggest superstars coming to Brooklyn. Even, Jimmy Butler, when he was going through his stuff, had the Nets on his list. Other superstars have had the Nets on their list of place they want to be. So now it's not just this team. And I said this when KD and Kyrie came. Brooklyn is a destination. So beyond this, there's going to be guys that want to be a part of it. So it's more about what they've built than anything. Back then, that deal was just a ploy to fill the seats because the owner didn't know basketball and meddled his way into basketball decisions. And I don't think this is that.
But even that, I was concerned about how the team turned out, like chemistry wise or playbook wise. Because Jack, I think you mentioned how Steve Nash not handled the timeout plays, like you said in your last podcast. But my main issue for that trade was like that defense not really good before the trade, and it got a little more worse. And you missed a lot of depth. I think you need that when you go against, let's say you're going to the finals against the Lakers or the Clippers.
Yeah, I mean, I'll address that. I said it on the podcast. I'm definitely not going to be the guy who's going to come on here and say this is going to be a perfect transition. Everything's going to work out, like a fantasy. I don't think it will. I think there's going to be growing pains for sure. The defense, I don't think, is where it has to be at for them to win a championship right now. But I don't think they're done. I still think they're going to add to this roster, be it depth and defense. I think they're going to take care of both of that. And the big man down low, I think they're going to shore up that position. Getting Nick Claxton back from injury will help. And two, I just think that playing together, they're going to start to figure each other out. Steve Nash has already shown improvement over the last few games as a head coach. I think that's very important for them. But I would definitely be at least cautiously excited and optimistic because they are such great players. I trust that even if they're not going to win a championship, I trust that they're going to make it work to the point where, they are going to be there at the end. They're going to be one of the teams to get through, regardless of the question marks. Before the deal, they were 13th in defensive efficiency, I'm pretty sure. And all the last 20 champions have been at least top 11 in the league. If they can even just maintain that 13 or be in the top 15, be a top average team in the league, I think they have the offense to do it. But I understand the concerns. I would at least be cautiously optimistic.
And I think we saw a little bit of that in the Bucks game tonight. Because in the fourth quarter, when it was back and forth, I kept saying to myself, the first team to get a stop is going to win this game. Neither team got a stop. And, that's why I went back and forth. Obviously, you have Katie and James Harden on the same team in an offensive battle. We all know who's going to win that. Went down to the last shot. Okay, whatever. Nets came out with the win. Doesn't really matter. But, I mean, defense, it's not an issue right now. And listen, even Sean Marks said this team is not finished. They're going to go out and they're going to get, some more playmakers, hopefully a big man to help out DeAndre Jordan. And I'm still waiting to see how Nick Claxton does in his return because he's a good project. So if we can get him to be, like a mini Jared Allen, a shot blocking phenom, he doesn't have to become, Jared Allen 2.0. But if he can show signs of being, an elite shot blocker and an elite rim protector, I think that's everything this team would, ask for him.
Okay. I have one more question.
All right,
Does
go
the
for
I think two of y'all know I'm a Texas fan, but and y'all happy and two of y'all are happy had a coach as a Jets fan, but what coach you think would be better for the Houston Texans?
I think the best coach is Eric Bieniemy. I think hiring Eric Bieniemy is the only way that Deshaun Watson is going to stay with the Texans. So I think they're going to do whatever they can to get Eric Bieniemy there.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I would say Eric Bieniemy, and not to belittle him as a head coach because he was one of the top guys that I was looking at for the Jets job. But if Deshaun Watson told you to go hire the Elmo impersonator from Times Square, you do that at this point. Whatever he wants, you do, because you cannot lose a 25-year-old superstar quarterback. If you were redrafting the league right now, he would be a top 3 pick. So if it takes Eric Bieniemy, even if that's not your top candidate, you do it, because anything they can do to mend that relationship, they must do. So if they don't hire him, you might as well open the door and let Deshaun Watson walk.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a lot of this beef started was, or the reason a lot of this beef, came out was because the Texans didn't even interview Eric Bieniemy last season when Deshaun Watson asked him to. So listen, that's a great analogy there, Jack. If Deshaun Watson tells you to hire anyone, at least give them an interview. Give him a sense of like, okay, you're a star quarterback. We trust you. Texans haven't given that to him, and there's a reason why he wants his way out of Houston.
Somebody just commented Texans going to the Super Bowl and Bill O'Brien Finals MVP.
Okay. I'm not saying y'all wrong, but I think y'all kind of misquoted. He didn't really say hire Eric Bieniemy. He said like give him like at least an interview. I think people misquote that, but let's say you didn't hire him. What about the office coordinator for the Buffalo Bills or the defensive coordinator for the Indianapolis Colts?
I think Brian Daboll makes the most sense because he's a former Patriot guy. And right now, the Texans are trying to fill their whole staff with Patriot guys. They hired Nick Caserio, who's from the Patriots, to be their GM. Jack Easterby is from the Patriots. So Brian Daboll, there's familiarity there. So I wouldn't be surprised if he becomes the Texans' next head coach. But for me, like, I think the Texans, based on where this roster is right now, it really is. It's confusing because if you have Deshaun Watson, I think you go for a defensive coordinator to try to maximize that defense. But if you hire Brian Daboll, Deshaun Watson is probably out the door. So now Brian Daboll, like, what's going to happen at quarterback there? It's really a tough question. I don't know what's going to happen.
I love Brian Daboll as a head coaching candidate. Again, he was probably at the end. It came down to him and Robert Saleh for me as the next Jets head coach, and that's my own team. So clearly, I thought very highly of him. You see what he's done with the Bills, and you brought up Matt Eberflus too from Indianapolis. A defense, that Colts roster, it's not the most talented in the league, but it's one of the best in the league year in and year out. So clearly, he knows how to get the most out of his talent. It's a great organization there in Indianapolis. That's just two of the candidates that if they don't get hired next year, you'll see their name again. Or if they don't get hired this year, you'll see their name again next year in the coaching searches. So anybody who's looking for a coach next year is going to be lucky because there's probably 5 or 6 names that I thought could have gotten called this year that will be right back on the list next year for any team looking for a head coach. So the Texans are definitely not devoid of options here. It's just they have much bigger problems to deal with than the head coaching candidate right now. But I would like Bieniemy for that job. But any of the 3 guys you mentioned, I think would be very formidable candidates.
Yeah, for me, Daboll's the number one, coach left on the market, I guess you could say. And I saw a comment in the chat that Eric Bieniemy is, the next Adam Gase. Hear me out. There's a theory behind that. Because think about it, the reason why Eric Bieniemy, shot up to this, superstardom was because he had Patrick Mahomes as his QB. So it made it kind of easy for you, to kind of shine. Same thing for Adam Gase. He had Peyton Manning, who was able to man, one of the greatest offenses in NFL history. unlike Adam Gase, Bieniemy didn't choke a Super Bowl away, but I still think Daboll is my number one guy. I would like to see Bieniemy, get a head coaching chance, but I think for right now, you stick it out with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid because what the Chiefs have is like really special. Like I don't know if we'll ever see something like that, again for a long while. But Daboll, he's the number one coach on the market for me.
And honestly, at this point, I think the Texans head coaching job, that's just a recipe for disaster. And anybody who goes there is probably going to fail. So if I was Eric Bieniemy, and we already know African American head coaches don't get the most opportunities, I wouldn't want an opportunity like that, which the failure rate is really high.
Oh, okay. Thanks for the call.
Man, anytime, man. Thank you for calling. We appreciate you.
It's great talking to you, Leo.
Yeah, thanks,
Great
man.
to talk to you too. Bye.
And I just want to say one thing about the Bieniemy Gase comparison. I could be wrong about this, but everything that we've seen out of Bieniemy, like just hearing him speak, he's already 1,000 times the leader and respected guy that Gase ever was. I never got that vibe from Gase that his players. I actually got the opposite vibe from him. Like guys didn't want to be with the Dolphins because he was there. Bieniemy really seems like he commands respect from his guys, and it's not like a forced relationship. Guys really like playing for him, and I know one of the reasons Watson wanted him was because Patrick Mahomes called him and told him how good Bieniemy was with him. So I don't think that comparison is going to pan out.
So right now we have a caller.
To accept, press 1.
It might be Odante.
Yes, sir.
Hey, what's up, man? How are you?
Good, man. How you?
We doing good. Well, I'm trying to like concentrate and also watch this Lakers and Warriors.
That's
It's pretty cool.
Yeah,
4-point game.
Warriors came back, man.
What's the score? I'm actually not watching it right now.
112-108. The Warriors retook the lead.
No way. Wow, that's nice. It's nice to see Steph Curry actually lead the team for once.
So what's up, man? What's your question?
All right, my question is, Eric Bieniemy. He's been a hot head coach for the last 2 years, but he hasn't got a job. Why is that?
I'm not gonna go with the simple answer that everybody's gonna go with or that everybody likes to go with. I'll say because there's a lot of concern with Eric Bieniemy. I think if you are like a GM or a team president that wants to hire him, because just look at it from a logical standpoint. Eric Bieniemy is somebody who, yes, their offense is always good, but it should be. Like, you got the most offensive talent in the NFL, like no doubt about it. You have the best quarterback in the NFL. So for you to mess that job up is on you. While there are other coaches in the NFL who they have taken offenses that have not been known to be top offenses and have made them really good. You look at Arthur Smith. Before he got there, the Titans weren't a household offense. They weren't a household name on offense. He gets there, the offense is one of the best in the NFL. You look at Brandon Staley. Last year, the Rams' defense was mediocre. This year, they're the best elite, best defense in the NFL. So a Bieniemy, he hasn't shown that he can take a unit that has mediocre talent and make it exceed expectations.
But all right, let me counteract that real quick. When Mahomes got drafted, we didn't know he was this good. We didn't know he was this good at the draft, and he didn't even play the first year. Before Tyreek Hill became a Pro Bowl wide receiver, we seen the talent, but we didn't know he was going to be this good at wide receiver. We knew what Kelsey was. So why don't we ever give Bieniemy credit for them being better than we originally thought?
I personally feel like them getting better is more on like the position coaches. I wouldn't say that was Bieniemy, but I do give Bieniemy credit. Like I think he should get a job. I thought he should have got a job last year. It just so happened that I also think that this plays into the part is that Eric Bieniemy, he's coaching right now. He's about to go to Super Bowl possibly. He's going to be in a championship game against the Bills. These other coaches that have gotten hired, Robert Saleh didn't make the playoffs. Arthur Smith was in it and got bounced out. We saw Brian Daboll. He didn't get hired yet. I think part of it is that most teams want to get a guy in because it's not a surefire yes to interview another guy. Because Robert Saleh, if the Jets waited to get a Bieniemy or Brian Daboll, he might have been gone by the time that they could have got a chance. So most of this is
Yeah.
just teams trying to get their head coach as soon as possible. And Eric Bieniemy always makes it far in the playoffs, so he can't get hired sooner.
Yeah, I get that point. I get that.
Yeah, and I'll also add, this is just strictly playing devil's advocate because I want to preface this by saying I think he should get a head coaching job. I think he should have gotten one last season. I thought the Jets should have brought him in instead of Adam Gase. But I do think there are a couple of reasons why teams are skeptical. One, obviously that offense is so stacked. Two, that's still Andy Reid's offense. You know, he's really calling the shots there. So people are skeptical for that reason. Three, I don't know how true this is, but I've heard that he has not done well in head coaching interviews, specifically with the Atlanta Falcons. I heard that they were not impressed by his interview at all. And four, I don't think this is as important as the other ones, but he does have a little bit of a checkered past. When he was a college coach, there were some discretions there. So I think it's a number of reasons that it could be. I still would hire him in a heartbeat. I think he's done a great job in Kansas City. I think he deserves at least a hand in that success, and a team would be smart to bring him in.
Yeah, I don't think it hurts for a team to give him a shot. Like honestly, just bring him in as a head coach. If you got a young quarterback, like maybe if the Eagles want to give him a shot, with Jalen Hurts, just do it. Why not? It doesn't hurt. But I mean, it's hard to mess up offensive situation when you got Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, and all that. But honestly, if there's a team that wants to take a shot at him, go for it. I don't think there should be anything stopping you from that.
For sure. All right. So my second question. It's another coach. Eberflus. Why do you guys think he hasn't gotten hired? He's had top defense for the last 2 years. The best name being Darius Leonard.
I mean, he's an all-pro. I think so.
He is an all-pro, but last year, after Darius Leonard, their best player was probably Teray, and nobody knows him. You know what I'm saying? Like, why doesn't he have a head coaching job?
I think it just depends on what teams needed. I think for Atlanta, they wanted an offensive-minded head coach because they have a great offensive unit already. So they wanted to maximize their offensive unit. So they brought in Arthur Smith. You look at the Chargers, they wanted defense. They brought in Brandon Staley. And while I think that Brandon Staley and Matt Eberflus, you can go back and forth with those, he's called the Sean McVay of defensive coordinators. So there's high praise amongst NFL circles within Brandon Staley. You look at the Jaguars, you can't pass up on Urban Meyer. You really can't pass up on Urban Meyer. He was the coach that everybody wanted. Like he was a coach that everybody wanted. So for me, I'm not sure why Matt Eberflus hasn't gotten a job. Because right now it doesn't seem like he's gonna get one. Because the Texans job, if I were him, I wouldn't want to go there. The Eagles job, I feel like the Eagles might get Bieniemy. And Andy Reid hinted at that when he said that I hope that he goes to an NFC team. Only NFC team that needs a head coach right now are the Eagles. So I think Bieniemy probably goes to the Eagles. And pretty much, yeah, I think it's just about, I think Matt Eberflus not getting hired is more about just so many head coaching candidates being available this offseason.
Okay. I got one more question for you. It's really for y'all too, unless Ronnie, are you a Jets fan?
I am a Jets fan.
Okay, so this for you too. What would y'all like us to do at number 2?
That's tough, man. I mean, I tweeted out the other day that if I'm the Jets, there is no question in my mind I'm taking Devontae Smith at 2. Like,
same here.
Because listen, like, I feel like it's kind of given that we're gonna give Sam Darnold another chance, and he deserves it. Okay, listen, I'm the biggest Sam Darnold fan coming out of USC. He deserves Mike LaFleur as an offensive coordinator. He deserves it. He deserves a guy who can really, tap into that untapped potential that he needs. And then you give him a young receiver in Devontae Smith who can help him out after you gave him Denzel Mims, a draft earlier. I think that's a perfect fit for him. I mean, our O-line, if we want to get what's the guy from Oregon? I'm forgetting.
Sewell.
Sewell. If we want to get Sewell, then okay, stack up on the O-line. I get that. But honestly, if we're gonna stick with Sam, get him an offensive weapon. And the best choice is Devontae Smith.
And Robert Saleh, the guy in the comments right now, he asked this question earlier. What should we do at 2? And I'm going to say this, Robert Saleh, you should tell us, what are you going to do at number 2? But look, what I do is that I get that everybody wants to be optimistic about Sam Darnold. And I do get that because he is a guy that we thought was going to be the franchise quarterback. But man, I don't think the tape lies. Yes, he's been put in a horrible situation, but the tape shows that he makes really dumb decisions with the football. He throws it. He makes horrible decisions that he shouldn't be making in his third year. Regardless if Adam Gase is your head coach or not, you should know where to throw the ball in those situations. You look at Deshaun Watson. No offensive line. You take away his number 1 wide receiver. He goes through a new head coaching hire. This year, he had the best quarterback rating of his career. I'm saying if Sam Darnold was a star quarterback, it would have showed already, and it hasn't shown. So for me, I'd go with Zach Wilson at number 2, or what I'd actually do is I trade for Deshaun Watson. Whatever they want, I'm giving for Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, I'm gonna piggyback off. I'm gonna piggyback off Joel.
Go ahead.
I think that the Jets should load up the Brinks truck, whatever the Texans want for Deshaun Watson, whatever a guy like that is available at the quarterback position, you should pounce at that offer. I think he would come in, and between the cap space that we have and the remaining draft picks we would have, I think the Jets would immediately become at least a playoff contender with that guy at the helm. But if you can't do that, I do think that the Jets are going to stick with Sam Darnold strictly because of their coaching hire. Robert Saleh bringing in Mike LaFleur. If you look at that 49ers system, it's not reliant on a great quarterback at the helm. They went to the Super Bowl with Jimmy G, and I don't see him as anything more than, a good game manager. They rely more on the running game. So I think that they're going to go into this offseason focusing on bringing in a good running game and sticking with Sam Darnold at the quarterback. So whether that is, taking Penei Sewell at number 2 or trading back, I don't think they're going to end up taking a quarterback at 2. I think it's either going to be a trade for Watson. I think it's going to be Penei Sewell or a trade back.
I think that Jimmy G is a good quarterback. I'm not super high on him, but I think that because of this season, we've really been starting to disrespect Jimmy G. Like, he hasn't won 80% of his games or more. Like, he hasn't been a winner with the Patriots. Like, Bill Belichick didn't want to keep him. So Jimmy G's a really good quarterback. I think he's like a top 20, top 18 quarterback in the league. I don't think that's Sam Darnold. I don't. Like, you can say whatever you want about Jimmy G, but Jimmy G is accurate with the football and he reads the field well. I don't know if that's Sam Darnold. I think Sam Darnold still likes to make a bunch of hero plays, and he doesn't have the talent. Like, Sam Darnold, people rave about these plays that he makes, but he doesn't have a really strong arm. He really doesn't. He's not accurate down the field at all. Robbie Anderson would have had 1,000 yards with the Jets if Sam Darnold could throw the deep ball while he was a Jet. That's a fact. Robbie goes to a place in the Panthers where Teddy can't even throw the deep ball, and he gets 1,000 yards receiving. The Jets have to get a talented QB, and I think that's Zach Wilson or Deshaun Watson.
You blamed Sam for that. I don't think that was Sam's fault. I think anybody who was watching those games could see Sam's never had time that whole season. He was running for his life all season.
I get it. Yeah, I get it. I get that the offensive line was a problem. But at the end of the day, I just wouldn't go with Sam because it's not only what I think about him as a player, but also about the Jets' timeline. Sam Darnold is going to be due for a contract extension next season. If he has a breakout year with the Jets, God forbid, God forbid, because we got to then pay him a lot of money based off the season. But if we get a rookie quarterback in like Zach Wilson or Justin Fields, we now have a QB on a rookie contract for the next 4 years.
Yeah.
If I like, my take is, I think we know, and at least in my opinion, the Jets really only have two options next season at quarterback. It's either going to be Deshaun Watson or Sam Darnold. Because if we end up not getting Deshaun Watson via trade, I think it's clear that we're going to stick with Sam Darnold. And I'm really not so high on, the Deshaun, Watson train, because I really don't think he might come to New York. I mean, with the trade clause, he has the opportunity to pick where he wants to go. And, why wouldn't he want to go to Miami, where they just won 10 wins? They're in a win now mode and a lot of young, talent, offensive weapons. Why not bring in Deshaun Watson, who can put him over the top? That's probably a 13-win team with Deshaun Watson, honestly. So I really think it's, Deshaun Watson or Sam, but I love Sam. I might be a little biased here, but I really think he just deserves a legitimate shot.
But with that Deshaun Watson take, I think he does want to come to New York. He's been liking stuff on Twitter. But Sam, I think he does deserve a shot. I would love if we get Watson, though. I wouldn't love to give up the world for him. Maybe 2 and 23, if that's enough. But nothing, no second rounds, no third rounds. That's too much. We still got to build a team here. I don't think if we just bring Deshaun Watson and nobody else, we're better. I think we'll be pretty bad.
I think we would be really good. I disagree.
Yeah, I disagree.
Deshaun Watson would be good.
I think
if we get Deshaun,
I think this team this year was a lot better than they looked record-wise. They were just horribly coached. I mean, they beat 2 playoff teams. Granted, the Browns had a situation going on with their receivers. They beat 2 playoff teams, and they lost a couple other games by 1 score or, maybe a little more that they should have at least been in the game or won. There's a lot of talent on this roster. If you bring in a quarterback like Deshaun Watson, he automatically makes everyone around him better, and you would still have some money to spend. You'd still have a bunch of picks remaining. Even if you give up 2 and 23 and a second or third rounder, you would still have a 2 day 2 picks and a bunch of others later on in the draft. So there would still be a lot of building on this team. I think Deshaun Watson would immediately make you a playoff contender.
Not to mention, in our games against the Bills, week 1, we only lost by 10. And then the second time we played the Bills, we didn't let them score a touchdown. So, Jack, you're right. This team looked way better than 2 and 14. I think what helped in that was the fact that, they were tanking. Obviously, they were deliberately throwing games. And if you don't believe that, just look at the Raider game. You can't tell me otherwise. So, if they actually were to try and, if tanking wasn't, a thing and whatnot in the NFL, I think this team would have won maybe 4 games, 5, give or take. But, I just think this team could have been way better.
Yeah, they could have beat the Broncos. They could have beat the Raiders.
Mm-hmm.
What was that other team? The Patriots.
When Joe Flacco threw that disgusting interception with 7 minutes left in a 2-score lead, he threw a 60-yard interception. It was literally you might as well just punted the ball.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, man. Matter of fact, one more thing. Joel, just for Joel, did you come around on Joe Douglas yet? Because you was being kind of hard on him.
Look, I gotta see. It helps that a lot of luck is going his way. That's for sure. I mean, Robert Saleh, the coaching staff he's gonna bring, that's gonna make Joe Douglas look very good. But let's see what he does in the draft. Let's still see what he does if he trades for Deshaun, if he keeps Sam, or if he gets his quarterback. I'm gonna be honest. I think that this decision, the second pick, is going to make or break Joe Douglas, because if he sticks with Sam and Sam ends up being not good, we're not going to be good. And then that's going to come back to haunt Joe Douglas because he's stuck with Sam instead of drafting a guy in Zach Wilson who might become a star, or Justin Wilson who might become a star, or trading for a star in Deshaun Watson. So I think that this decision at the second pick is going to be make or break for him.
All right. That's it, man. I just want to say I'm proud of you guys and keep going.
We appreciate you, man. Thank you for calling.
Thank you. It was good hearing from you.
You're ready.
Joel, I want to add to that take. I also said, what are the odds Mac Jones is available, at our second first round pick? That's kind of, that's a stretch, a big stretch, I would say. But I mean, I wouldn't mind if, so what if we do draft, another quarterback and let Sam battle it out for that starting spot? Let him earn, that starting position that he hasn't been able to, really live up to for the past few years.
So right now we got another caller.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, what's up? How are you doing?
So I'm doing good. I just want to start off. I want to say I'm a big fan of the podcast, just so you know.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem, man. So the news broke yesterday that the Chargers hired Staley as their head coach, and I saw Joe's video on this take, but I just guess I want to just see Jack's point of view on it, on the hire.
Yeah, I like it. I think they did well. I said I thought they could have used a defensive-minded head coach just because I think that defense needed more work. I think that defensive side of the ball has the talent, and they just needed the right coaching. I didn't think Anthony Lynn was the guy for the job. I thought he made a lot of bad, even time management decisions this year that cost them. So I think automatically bringing in Staley is a plus. He's coming from under Sean McVay, which, Sean McVay is the brightest young mind in the NFL right now, and a bunch of guys from that tree have had success. So I like the system he's coming from. He's done great things with that Rams defense. And I think he's a good hire. I like what he's going to bring to that defensive unit. And I also think he's going to bring over some good minds, maybe from that Rams job or from elsewhere as a part of that McVay coaching tree that is coming up out of nowhere, which is crazy because he's only 35 years old, I think. So, but, getting back to the point, I like the hire. I think that defensive mind is what they needed. And that offensive side of the ball, I think Justin Herbert is going to have that handled. And if Staley can come in and do what I think he's going to do, I think they'll be in the playoff conversation next year.
All right. And what do you guys think he'll bring to the table in terms of Justin Herbert's production?
For me, I don't think Brandon Staley will bring much to Justin Herbert's production just because he's going to focus on the defensive side of the ball. I will say this. It might help because if he makes that defense into an elite unit and they create turnovers, that's going to give Justin Herbert great field position to score even easier. And if he doesn't have to do everything on the offensive side of the ball, he can be more efficient as well. I just think it really depends on who they get at OC. I've been hearing Pep Hamilton might get promoted. I've been hearing your current OC might stay. I think his name is Shane something.
Oh, Shane Steichen, yeah.
Yeah, Shane Steichen. He's okay. I know that they run the ball a lot in odd situations, but I think that was more influenced by Anthony Lynn than anything because he came up with some.
100%.
He came up with some pretty creative play calls. So whether it's him or Pep Hamilton, that would be great because if Justin Herbert produced this well in this offensive system, I think it would be a disservice to him to now get him to learn a new one.
Yeah, and I think that keeping Pep Hamilton is imperative for that offensive unit. He did such a great job with Herbert already, and he's been known around the league to be a quarterback whisperer type. So keeping him in the building, no matter what capacity it's in, I think is super important. And I don't know who they're going to go with as the offensive coordinator, but I heard one name that they floated around was Kevin O'Connell. I think was the offensive coordinator with the Rams. So if you can get him over for this Chargers job, again, you're bringing another guy from the McVay coaching tree that has done such a good job in Los Angeles. And I don't necessarily think that Jared Goff is a great quarterback. So to see the success that they've had with him, I think speaks to the job they've done as a coaching staff in LA. So I would like anybody that they could bring over from Los Angeles. So I think the staff that he's going to bring along with him is going to be a huge help for Herbert and just this whole team in general. Building the defense is going to help out the offensive side of the ball. The special teams is almost definitely going to improve because they had one of the worst special teams units in all of football last year. So all around the team improving is going to help Justin Herbert. So I like what this does for him and just the organization in general.
Yeah, and
all right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll go out and agree with that real quick. I think you look at how good the Rams did with Jared Goff, and that just speaks to a tribute to Brendan Staley. I was never a big fan of Jared Goff. I'm still not a big fan. I think you put any other quarterback on the Rams, they're Super Bowl contenders, for the past 3 years straight. But yeah, I just think it's all on him and Herbert just building great chemistry and bringing in that kind of mind to that defense. I mean, that could bring Justin Herbert to a whole different level.
All right. So last question here. What do you guys, if you guys could predict, where do you think Deshaun Watson will land in the offseason?
I think it's one of two places. It's the Jets or the Dolphins. And I want to say the Jets, but I'm leaning towards the Dolphins because if the Jets make a trade, the foundation of that trade, of course, are the first round picks, but it's also going to be Sam Darnold. For the Dolphins, it's going to be their picks and Tua. And I think right now in this moment, Tua has more upside than Sam Darnold. Like I think right now he's viewed in a better regard than Sam Darnold because Darnold's a turnover machine, and even though he has a physical talent, he makes bad decisions. Tua, in the right system, can become a great system quarterback. So I think right now the Dolphins trade package is better, and that's why I think the Dolphins will probably get him.
I'll say I could see 4 realistic destinations that would make sense, starting with the 2 that Joel mentioned, the Dolphins, the Jets. I would also include the Washington football team, who, if you could add him to that team with that defense, Terry McLaurin, Antonio Gibson, that would be scary. And I think the Washington football team will be a lock for the NFC East next year. Another team, the 49ers. We don't know what they're going to do now. They've had some shaking up in their coaching staff. We don't know how they feel about Jimmy G moving forward with the injuries. So a lot of question marks there. And again, another team, great defense, a couple of weapons offensively. If you could add Deshaun Watson to that team, they'd be scary. But I do think it comes down to the Jets and the Dolphins. I think the Dolphins have the better package. But if I'm Joe Douglas, I am doing everything I can to get Deshaun Watson, no matter what it takes, because if you let the Dolphins get him, you're dealing the next probably decade with Josh Allen and Deshaun Watson in your division, which essentially kills any hope that you have at a playoff spot unless Justin Fields or Zach Wilson become, a great NFL quarterback. So if I'm Joe Douglas, I'm doing anything to get him, anything I can to get him. But if he's not a Texan, I would think he's going to be a Dolphin next year.
Yeah, and I think the Jets are really it's kind of hard for me to pinpoint it, but I think the Jets are way more desperate for a new quarterback than the Dolphins are. I mean, we're hearing rumors that Tua is losing the locker room. A lot of people don't believe in him, on the team, which is sad in and of itself. But I think the Jets, are more, thirsty for that, quarterback position, considering they've gone so long without, a franchise QB. And yeah, I mean, Jack, you said it perfectly. If they don't end up getting him, listen, it's either Miami or the Jets. And whichever one of those teams doesn't get him, they're going to have to deal with Josh Allen, Deshaun Watson, and whoever the Patriots are able to develop into the next Tom Brady or whatever it is, while you're just battling out, hoping to get a second place in the AFC East and maybe a 6th seed or 7th seed into the playoffs.
If I'm Joe Douglas, I'm telling Cal McNair and the Texans organization, no matter what the Dolphins offer you, you call me back and I will match it. If not, make it better. You cannot let him get to Miami, because if he does, that's 2 of the best teams in the league in your division.
Yeah, well, I agree with that. So I guess that's it. Thank you guys for having me, though. A big fan of the podcast. And Joe, when's that merch shop coming in?
All right. Thank you, man. Thank you for calling. We appreciate you.
Thanks for the call.
Thank you.
Thank you, man.
No problem.
So I think Serge's brother wants to call. He's probably gonna talk about the Bills. And even if he talks about the Bills, man, I mean, listen, the Bills lost. Like, so I don't care. I remember he was talking. No, the Bills didn't. I'm chatting.
Bills won.
Yeah, I know. I I want to see what he has to say.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail,
Hello?
Yo,
Hey, what's up?
all right. So this question, I just wanted to tell this to Jack because I remember Sergio was showing me videos of Jack saying that Josh Allen was a terrible QB and that he was only a good NFL player but not a good quarterback, and that his problems were unfixable. Now that he's about to win MVP, what are your thoughts on that, Jack?
You can send me the clip, but I don't ever remember saying that his problems were unfixable. I was critical on him earlier in the year, and I stand by everything I said because coming into the year, it was true. And you look back at his numbers last year, he was incredibly inaccurate, and it was crippling for the Bills. And you saw it come playoff time. Those mistakes became much clearer. And the decisions he made in that Texans game in the playoffs, it didn't give me the quarterback instinct vibe. He was a great athlete playing the quarterback position, but he didn't have that all-time great quarterback instinct to me that you see in the top quarterbacks in the league. This year, he flipped that switch, and I think working with Brian Daboll and that group that they have in Buffalo helped him out tremendously. But he deserves all the credit because it takes him putting the work in. He's clearly done that. And no matter what you want to say, obviously like Stephon Diggs coming in helps him. But at the end of the day, it comes down to him putting in that work. He did it, and it's shown in his game. His accuracy has improved tremendously. I mean, it's worlds better than last year. His decision-making is so much better than last year. Just his quarterback instincts are so much better than last year. And I guess it comes with time. I personally didn't see it panning out, and I'll take the L on that one. I will fully admit that I was wrong, but I give him all the credit in the world for how he stepped up this year.
And before you say something, I'll just add to that real quick. You see what Jack did there, right? Jack does that a lot. Jack was like, I stand by everything I said, instead of just saying you were wrong. And that's exactly
I just said I was wrong.
That's exactly what he said. That's exactly what he did when he didn't want James Harden, when he called James Harden not a facilitator, he said he standed by it. And look, Jack, it's okay. You were wrong. That's it. Say that.
I just said I was wrong.
I mean, you
cut out.
I mean, you could say, you stand by what you said and still admit yourself to be wrong. I was saying the same stuff about Josh Allen, fumble prone. He's not a great, he's probably not a great quarterback. He still has to work on the pass game, his accuracy, whatnot. I mean, seeing what he did this year really shut me up. I will stand by, last season's stats. And Jack, you have last season's stats to back you up on that. Wasn't very accurate, fumble prone, this, and that. And, give him credit. Now he's an MVP candidate. You do have to give him the credit, in that sense. But I mean, you could be wrong, but, I'd still stand by that too. Josh Allen, I'm really mad he's about to win MVP because I cannot believe I talk so much smack about him.
Jack, do you stand by James Harden not being a facilitator?
In his last couple of years in Houston, he wasn't. He did not play like a facilitator. It's not that he couldn't facilitate, which I've said to you a million times, and you choose not to hear when I say that part, but he did not play like a facilitator in Houston. It's just like Anthony Davis could be a spot-up three-point shooter if he wanted to. He has that ability. He's a very efficient shooter from behind the three-point line, but he doesn't do that because he does other things well, and the team needs him to do other things. It makes no sense for him to do that. When James Harden plays the role of a pure point guard, he has the facilitating ability, and now you see that. But he did not do that the last 2 years in Houston.
He did. That's a bad analogy because taking the ball out of Anthony Davis's hands and making him a spot-up shooter is different from him having the ball. James Harden had the ball all the time, whether he was ISO scoring, whether he was in a pick-and-roll situation, whether he was dishing out to other guys. Guys, in the comments right now, in the YouTube comments, was James Harden a facilitator with the Houston Rockets for the past couple of years? I want to know what you guys have to say. Sorry for getting you off track, Sergis, brother. I don't even know your name, so you're going to have to remind me of your name.
All right, that's it. Bills Mafia were beating Rodgers in the Super Bowl. I'm not trying to go through Brady again. Bills Mafia, baby.
All right, man. Thank you. We appreciate your call.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Look, we got 4 yeses. There's 19 people watching. So come on, 15 people, get your answers in. Yes. Was James Harden a facilitator with the Houston Rockets? Yes.
I said we still got to wait for Robert Saleh. I'm only going by what Robert Saleh says. Oh, he said yes. Wow, in all caps, bro.
Listen, everybody could say yes. It does not matter to me. It's not going to change my opinion on it from what I watched and how I define a facilitator. That's not how he played to me. He's a great passer, and yes, he led the Rockets in assists. That's because he had the ball so much, and of course, he was going to be able to get assists when he was drawing all the attention of the defense. But I just don't see that the way he played. To me, he was so much of an isolation scorer. It took away from him being a facilitator. It's not meant as a district. I know you see it as a dig because you're in love with James Harden, but I mean it as he wasn't given the opportunity to facilitate by my definition of what I consider to be a facilitator.
Do we have to call to ask questions? Nah, you can ask questions in the comments. We haven't been getting to those because we've had callers ask questions, but you guys can just ask questions in the comments and we'll answer them. But look, this is what I got to say to that, Jack. That's just wrong. Because when you watch Harden play, he facilitates all the time. When he's in a pick and roll situation, when he ISOs and he gets to the basket and a defender steps up and he throws that little lob that looks like a floater to Capella, whoever the big man is, he did that like 80% of the time in Houston all the time. He wasn't a guy that just like that's why I don't know why Harden has gotten this bad rap for being a jock or something like that, because he never was in Houston. He was always a passer. There were times where he was aggressive to score, but he picks his spots. And this is the thing, because I had a problem with you classifying him as an ISO scorer, because to me he's an all-around offensive player. So like I'm not just classifying him with a label. Like I think he's an all-around offensive player.
And I don't disagree with you. He has all the tools offensively. And I'm not saying that it's something he did. I think the team put him in a position where he couldn't be a facilitator just because of what they put around him. They relied on him to do so much isolation scoring that it took away from other things he could do. Defense is another thing. He had to put in so much effort on the offensive side of the ball that defensively you were very rarely getting his 100% effort on the defensive side of the floor because you needed to count on 38 to 40 minutes a night out of him running the entire offense, scoring like half of your points. So
scoring and facilitating.
That's not what I would call it personally, but it's a difference of opinions on what the word means to you. I don't think he was a facilitator in his role in that Rockets offense. Personally, that's just the way I look at it. It's not meant to take away from him, even though you may think it is, but it just depends on how you define it.
Yeah, I will say in like the best of both worlds, it's hard to be a facilitator when you're the number one scoring option. Not only when you're the number one scoring option, when you're James freaking Harden, bro. Like you're putting up 60 points a game. It was first ever 60-point triple double. I mean, it's kind of hard to, facilitate when you got it like that and your team needs you to go out and score that many points just to have a chance at winning. So I think this opportunity in Brooklyn will showcase, if he is a facilitator, it will show out here because now he doesn't have to drop 60 every game. He can, spare the side with KD and, whenever Kyrie comes back, he'll be able to share with that too.
Yeah, and Odante mentioned Capella. I agree with you. When Capella was there, he played more facilitating role, but eventually they trade him. They go to the small ball lineup. And I think that from the time he entered the Rockets building to the time he left the Rockets, it became less and less of him being that facilitator that he could be and more of them just saying, you have to go out and give us buckets. And I put the blame on the organization for doing that. I put the blame on Mike D'Antoni for the way he was running that offense and the front office for the pieces that they put around him to put him in that position, especially trading Capella. I thought Capella was great for him, but towards the end, especially last year, I mean, Russell Westbrook couldn't shoot the ball. They relied on him to do everything in that offense, and most of it was scoring because that's what he had to do. But if you go back to his earlier Rockets days, I agree he played like a facilitator, and he played a little bit of that role in Oklahoma City, but of course it was smaller because he wasn't fully developed yet, and he had Russ and KD there. But the longer he spent in Houston, I feel like the more that role diminished just because of what the organization put around him.
Okay, so what I'm going to say is that I said this from the beginning. Trading Capella was more to complement Westbrook than it was to Harden. I said that from the very beginning because you couldn't have two non-shooters on the court at the same time, so they needed to play 5 out because of Westbrook. But I think this is where we're gonna stop this debate because it could get really heated. It could get really sidetracked because I know that Jack is not going to admit he was wrong and he should. So we'll go to this question, okay? We got about like 1, 2, 3, 4 questions that I see right now. Let's answer the question from Ashton Vega first because he's been having this question for a while. What do you think about the Saints getting Deshaun Watson because Drew Brees is retiring? I think there's no chance the Saints get Deshaun Watson because I think they're like under the cap by like $90 million. So there is no way for them to realistically get Deshaun Watson. I think they're going to stick with Jameis Winston next season, and they should. I'm really high on Jameis Winston. I really am. I think he can have a bounce back year, or he can revive his career, especially if Sean Payton is calling the plays.
They don't have the money to do that. I don't think they would have to pull cap theatrics to make that happen. So that's one reason why I don't think it's going to happen. Two, I think they planned on Drew Brees retiring after this year. That's why they went out and got Jameis Winston, and they have been essentially, grooming him as the next face of the franchise quarterback. And there was a moment on the sideline towards the end of this game, or the end of the game this past weekend, where Drew Brees turned to Jameis Winston and said, "This is your team now." Take it with a grain of salt, but that's the way I look at it. I think this is going to be Jameis Winston's team next year with a little bit of Taysom Hill mixed in those gadget plays that Sean Payton loves so much.
I don't think it would hurt the Saints to, draft like a maybe round 4, round 5 quarterback either. See if you find a diamond in the rough too, just in case Jameis Winston doesn't pan out. But yeah, going back to that, Deshaun Watson has no shot of going to New Orleans. I'll stick by it. He's going to the Jets or Miami. There is no difference. Or, if the Jets want to, or if the Texans want to go out and do something magical to try and keep him, then, those are the only 3 options. He's not going anywhere else.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. And then this is another question. Your thoughts on the Chargers choosing Staley over Daboll, or Daboll, however you want to pronounce it. For me, I think this was a decision about timing. And I think I mentioned this point earlier that Brian Daboll is still coaching in the playoffs. I guarantee you, if Brian Daboll and the Bills got bounced out and the Rams were in the NFC Championship, Brian Daboll would have been the Chargers head coach. I think it's all about timing because if the Chargers had waited on this decision and Brian Daboll did not pick the Chargers, they would have let Brandon Staley go because he was going to get a job. So they got a guy in the building, and I think for me they could have went either way because I like Daboll. He could have maximized Justin Herbert. Then again, I like Staley because that defense is going to be really good. I think our love for Brian Daboll this year has been kind of clouded because he did an awesome job with Josh Allen, but people are forgetting that he's a Patriot guy. And I'm just saying, everybody likes to throw a lot of shade at Patriot former coaches and they don't succeed. Yet everybody's forgetting that one piece of information about Brian Daboll. He's a Patriot guy too.
Yeah, I've been saying it. I think defense was the way to go for this Chargers team. I think that's the unit that needs the most help. And I personally believe that whoever they got defensively could bring in help offensively. And this is the best of both worlds. You bring in Staley, who's done a great job with that Rams defense, and he's going to bring some great minds from under Sean McVay from that Rams offensive side of the football. Keep Pep Hamilton around. I think it makes total sense. I don't think that Brian Daboll would have been a bad hire by any means because you see what he's done with Josh Allen in Buffalo. But I like that they went out, they got a guy who they thought could be the guy to turn it around. And I think they made a good decision, brought in a good hire.
Yeah, I would have went with Daboll over Staley if it was, my team, if I was making the decision. Because you look at the job Daboll did with Josh Allen. Josh Allen was way worse his rookie season than Justin Herbert was. That's a fact. We don't even have to talk anymore about that. So I think if you bring in Daboll to that, situation over in LA, that's like a recipe for something great with Justin Herbert. So, I mean, don't get me wrong. I still believe in Staley. I think we should give him a shot. And that offense is basically going to go as far as, Justin Herbert's production and development will take it. But, I said it before, Staley was able to keep the Rams, a playoff team with Jared Goff at quarterback, I think he'll be able to do, a fine enough job with Justin Herbert in that position.
So this is a question. How do we feel about Zoe? And I'm guessing that's Lonzo Ball. He's never going to be that guy. That's how I feel about him. I think he's a good role player. I don't know how good of a point guard he can be like starting. I don't know how good of a starter he can be. But I just think Lonzo, he is what he is. People have to stop expecting that this guy is going to be a superstar, that he just needs a better situation, all this, all that. Lonzo is what he is. A guy who's a streaky shooter, plays great defense, but he is what he is.
Yeah, I like Lonzo a lot. Again, like Joel said, I don't think he's going to become what people thought he was going to be out of the draft. He'll never be a superstar. Probably won't ever even get to a star level. I think he could be an all-star type player. Maybe one of those guys who makes one or two all-star teams at some point in his career, has a great year. But I think there's definitely going to be places for him in the league throughout his career. He's a great defender, a great passer, has a high basketball IQ. He's obviously not the offensive player that you would want him to be scoring the basketball or efficiency-wise, but I still think he's going to be around this league for a very long time just because he knows the game so well. He's a great passer, great defender, and championship teams are always looking for that.
Yeah, Lonzo, I've been saying it, from the beginning. He has a super high ceiling that I never thought he was ever going to reach. I mean, I'm not saying he's peaked right now, but I think one All-Star appearance, maybe two, is probably his peak, in his career. He's a great defender, a flashy passer, but his streaky shooting really, set him up for the demise. And it kind of sucks. He's in the same league as his brother, as of right now, and it's just a sad situation, honestly, with Lonzo. I don't want to say, put him in a better situation. It would have been way better for him, but with the kind of talent he has on the passing side and on the defensive side, he really had the potential to be something great, but just his scoring inability was really, what held him down.
I also don't think it helped him landing in Los Angeles, one, because of the spotlight along with his father and the expectations that were kind of pushed onto him because of, the headlines surrounding him. Two, because the Lakers have been notoriously bad at developing talent over the last probably decade or so. What good player have they raised up through the ranks? All the guys they have in there right now have been free agents or trades. Rob Pelinka has done a great job in that aspect of things. But when it comes to rookies and developing talent, Kyle Kuzma had a great rookie year, and then he's been a disappointment ever since. Lonzo Ball, Josh Hart, Julius Randle, none of that, D'Angelo Russell. A lot of those guys went elsewhere and became better players. Brandon Ingram is another guy. Never really lived up to his potential in LA, and now he's in New Orleans balling. And maybe that's just because they took more time and developed over the course of time. But I think it's a little sketchy when you see so much young talent leaving LA and improving elsewhere. They're great at bringing in talent, but I don't think they're great at breeding young talent.
It is crazy because, I mean, how good could this Lakers team be if they had D'Lo, Brandon Ingram, Julius Randle, Lonzo, Josh Hart,
and LeBron?
I don't know. And, well, people forget they traded Ivica Zubac too. So
yeah, for not, who did they even trade him for?
Mike Muscala.
Yeah.
So look, right now, somebody, Serge Saucy sent me a video, Jack, of you saying that you thought that Josh Allen's problems couldn't be solved.
Let me hear it.
And you use your world-class analogies. I haven't even listened to it.
Player, but he's not a great quarterback.
Okay, let me see.
Just a great player, but he's not a great quarterback.
He's dumb.
You look at the best quarterbacks in the league, Russell Wilson. You look back at like a guy like Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Drew Brees. Like, he does not have what they have, and I don't think you can grow that. I think that's something that you either come into the league as or you're not, and I don't think he has that.
I think
so. Like, he's just a great player.
I didn't see nothing wrong.
Take a look at Oladipo with this.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I was wrong about him. Clearly, obviously, he had an MVP season, but he just improved a lot as a player. I could read the stats out for you, but his completion percentage rose like 11 points. His catchable ball percentage raised almost 10 points. So like he improved a lot as a quarterback. I still, I know you guys hate when I say this, but I stand by what I said at the time. That was in September, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I mean, look, I said the same thing about Josh Allen, so I'm not gonna say like I said anything different.
No, I was wrong. Like I'll fully admit that I was wrong on him, but I it's not like something that I feel stupid looking back and saying, because at the time, and again, I see him in the chat, but I never said that, I didn't think it was fixable. I just said I didn't think he had it, and I don't know if you can grow that. Clearly, it still remains to be seen if this is sustainable, but I think he improved his accuracy and all of that. He improved a lot. I was wrong on that. I'll own that. I've always been a guy to admit that I was wrong. Clearly I was wrong here, but looking back to when I said that, I don't think it was something outlandish based on what he had seen, what we had seen.
I mean, getting Stephon Diggs and an eligible slot receiver and Cole Beasley also really helped him too, which is something that, I mean, I'm guessing this argument came out between a Sam Darnold, Josh Allen comparison kind of argument. I mean, if the Jets weren't able to, get Sam, any help, and the Bills were, obviously that was going to be a recipe for disaster when it came to Sam. So I think getting him Stephon Diggs was like the number one thing to really, help him out. You got a number one guy now who, broke every receiver record, for the Bills. So I think that helped out tremendously.
How many other quarterbacks, I can't personally think of any that we've seen go from what he was last year to what he's been this year. It's not something that you see. So this is an outlier. This is the exception to the rule.
Yeah, the only one, I think there's two that come to mind. Obviously Ryan Tannehill, but Ryan Tannehill was never a bad quarterback in Miami. And I think people think that, but he was never a bad quarterback in Miami. Alex Smith and the 49ers, yeah, he was horrible to begin with the 49ers until John Harbaugh got there. But you're right. No other guy has done it besides Josh Allen. And we're gonna start to hear a lot. We're gonna start to hear this a lot. We're going to start hearing when quarterbacks do bad their first 2 seasons or rookie year that, oh, look at Josh Allen. The same thing they say with Peyton. Oh, Peyton Manning threw 28 interceptions his rookie year. Rookie years don't matter. That is thrown around like patties on a hamburger bun. All the time, people say that when a rookie has a bad season. Oh, Peyton Manning had a bad rookie year, though. All this and all that. But in reality, Josh Allen is an anomaly, just like Peyton Manning was an anomaly. You look at Jameis Winston's turnovers. There was a stat and a graphic that showed that Jameis Winston had as much turnovers as Peyton Manning in like their first 5 years of their career. And because of that, people felt like Jameis is now going to be like a Hall of Fame level quarterback. And the same thing can be said. Like when I've been saying that Tua is not going to be that great because of these intangibles and stuff, everybody mentions Josh Allen as the poster child of a quarterback that could be great, even if he wasn't that good his first 2 seasons. So
yeah, and when you look at the guy like in the league right now, I'm not talking about like becoming a good quarterback. I'm talking about becoming a great quarterback, which obviously Josh Allen has become this season. But when you look at the other guys in the league, Patrick Mahomes, from the first day he stepped in as a starter, you could see that he was special. Same thing with Deshaun Watson, with Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Drew Brees. I could go down the list, but I feel like all of the elite talent at the quarterback position, it from day one if they really have that potential. And Josh Allen has been the exception to that because he had so many problems that he needed to fix. But the Bills did a great job helping him through that process. Bringing in Stephon Diggs was huge. You can't, overstate how much that helped him. They've been one of the best duos in the league, and Brian Daboll has done a great job with him, and he put in the hard work. It was the perfect combination, and, he's proven me wrong.
And I think another quarterback you could bring up is Drew Brees, who had a really slow start to his career. I mean, I took me a while to look up his stats, but I only played 1 game his rookie season. But then in 2002, 17 touchdowns compared to 16 interceptions. And the year after that, 11 touchdowns to 15 interceptions. And I mean, he's arguably one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time right now. So, I mean, it all depends on the right system. It all depends on, the kid's confidence and being able to help him out. And Josh Allen, he's so lucky he was able to go to, not only a system in Buffalo, but a city like Buffalo where all they care about is football, and they give so much attention to everyone on that team.
And
So
players.
that too, and I listen. Josh Allen just ended up in a perfect situation, and I don't think there's any more to say. That he shut up a lot of people.
And they ended up in a situation. He ended up in a situation where the front office was aggressive. You think about it. John Brown and Cole Beasley signed there. Then the next year they gave him a number one wide receiver. Sam Darnold, Joe Douglas did not resign Robbie. If they signed Jameson Crowder, McCagnon did. But if we would have had Robbie Crowder and then we would have traded for like a Stephon Diggs or DeAndre Hopkins on the market, then yeah, I think Sam Darnold would have had a breakout third year. But no, we ended up with Brashard Perriman, a rookie, and Denzel Mims and Jamison Crowder, and all of them weren't even healthy throughout the season.
Yeah, and you want to say Drew Brees was not that day one guy. That's one elite quarterback in probably 20 years. I'll take those odds. You're playing a dangerous game betting on, 1 to how many odds that a guy is going to become an elite quarterback after not being that guy from day one. So give credit to the Bills. Like Joel said, they did everything they had to do to put him in this situation, and he followed through with the hard work it took to improve. But, I give him all the credit, and I was wrong.
Is James Harden a facilitator?
Right now, yes. Was he last year in Houston? No, I did not see that. I did not see it that way. I want to clear up specifically last year in Houston without Capella, with Russell Westbrook, and the shooters not performing around him. That is where I saw him as not as much of a facilitator.
Right now, okay, Mateen, one of our Patreons is in the chat. He asked, "Where's River?" Right now, River said that he couldn't. He was busy, so he couldn't be in the live stream. And somebody else, Robert Sala, was like, "Can my boy Ronnie be on the podcast weekly?" Hell yeah, man. We're down. We're trying to, for everybody that's listening to the podcast right now, this is our scenario that we want to do within this live stream format. So we want to be going live not after everything, but after a big primetime game or something like that. So today the Nets and Bucks played. We could have talked about that. We're just going to try to go live more often to interact with you guys so you guys can call in and stuff like that. Because during our full show, after we record 2 hours or 3 hours of a show, we're really tired and we just want to put out the videos and edit it. So that's why we don't take in callers no more. So we want to create this live stream format so you guys can ask questions and so you guys can call in. And my scenario for it is that every single time that we do this live stream, Riv, Jack, I, and a guest is going to be in here, all the time. We're trying to also get guests on the podcast too. So we'll see how that goes. Lately, it's kind of been really congested because everything's been super busy. But yeah, we're trying to get a guest into this live stream format every single time we go live. So whether it's Riv, if Riv's a staple of this podcast, obviously. So whether it's Ronnie, whether it's somebody else, we're always trying to get somebody in. If Ronnie's available, he'll be here. So that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I also want to shout out Robert Sala for that. He's been showing love all throughout the entire show, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, man, the new Jets head coach, Robert Sala. we were talking about Lonzo earlier, and for me, I think that it's Lonzo's problem is that he's just not aggressive. That's really what I think his problem is. Like, he's not an aggressive scorer because him and LaMelo, like if Lonzo had the confidence of LaMelo, Lonzo will be playing like LaMelo's playing right now with the flashy passes, ability to score and shoot. But LaMelo, you could see he has all the confidence in the world. He's outgoing. Lonzo's very reserved. He's more of a just dish it out to guys. He doesn't want to be the center of attention. But LaMelo embraces that.
Yeah, I think you summed it up perfectly. Lonzo is just so much of a pass first guy. Like he is the pure point guard. Like maybe not Jason Kidd, but like that always looking to, give the ball up. Like that's the first thing he's thinking is put somebody else in a better position to score the ball. Whereas LaMelo is more of that I feel like he has more of that superstar attitude, that swagger, that willingness to take any shot on the floor, and the confidence to take any shot on the floor, like you mentioned. Every superstar in the league has that. All the top guys want to be the guy to take that shot at the end of the game, just for an example. So I think LaMelo has that, and Lonzo is more reserved and more of a pure point guard type player mindset wise.
I like that example you gave, Jack. I do see a little bit of Jason Kidd in Lonzo Ball. Take away the 3-point shooting, because the flashy passing, the nice dribbling, and the the rim finishing, all staples of Jason Kidd. I mean, me and that we grew up watching him. So, I for Lonzo, man, it's kind of sad because he was one of my favorite players to watch when he was in college, and people were talking about, oh, the jump shot won't translate, this, and that. It was like, let the kid work out. Give the kid a shot. People were shooting him down before he even put on a Lakers jersey. But I mean, another thing is it's because of his situation. We talked about him, going to LA, on the bright lights. He never had to be the number one guy, because when he was in LA, he had D'Lo, he had Brandon Ingram, who were, built to be the go-to scorers. Now he goes to New Orleans with Brandon Ingram, and now Brandon Ingram's built to be the go-to scorer. And then last season, you had Drew Holiday, who was also, a great scoring option for them as well. So, I mean, he hasn't been aggressive because he doesn't have to be. He just has to be the guy to facilitate, pass, and, when he's given the opportunity to score, he has to score. He's not a guy who, can take over, because he hasn't had to be that guy for, his entire career.
And I'll say this. I think Lonzo walked so LaMelo could run. And I say that because Lonzo, when he was coming into the league, his dad was saying he was better than Steph Curry, all this stuff. Lonzo was on First Take, on Undisputed, all these sports shows. They were comparing him to great point guards. They were hyping him up a lot. He had his first basketball shoe, all this stuff. And because of that, and because of how Lonzo turned out, where Lonzo was not the superstar that everybody thought he was going to be, LaMelo was able to come into the league and have that kind of label on him that he was going to be similar to his brother in Lonzo, and he wouldn't be that good. And because of that, LaMelo he didn't have the expectations that Lonzo had.
100% agree. And I think, like you mentioned, Lonzo kind of took the bullet, and it's unfortunate that it had to work out that way, but you really don't hear much from LeVar these days. I mean, you still hear bits and pieces here and there, but LeVar was bigger than Lonzo was when he was first coming into the league. It was the LeVar show, and he was saying, like, my boy will only play for the Lakers. We're not going to no Phoenix. So it was just kind of like everything that he said put Lonzo under this microscope, and it was like, okay, well, your dad's talking that talk. Now you got to back it up, which was so unfair for Lonzo because he's such a reserved guy. He never put those labels on himself, but he had to wear it for his dad to then ultimately see, okay, maybe I'm hurting my son realistically in the long run. And then you see LaMelo went through such a process, almost, I think, because of what his brother went through, where he goes overseas and then he goes to Australia and takes this different career path to the NBA. But ultimately, I think it was the perfect path for him. I think it was humbling for him. But I also think he retained that confidence that he needed. And he knew when he got to the NBA level, he could be that guy. And now his father's kind of out of the spotlight, and he's not facing that same scrutiny that Lonzo was when he got into the league.
100% agree with that. I mean, yeah, Lonzo, they threw him to the wolves, with all that media attention. LaMelo was able to see that. And I mean, he went to Charlotte. Charlotte, is like an up and coming team. So there's not, much really to build off of there. So, he kind of has free range to go out and do that. And I'm on the train to let LaMelo start. I haven't kept up with the Hornets yet. I'm pretty sure he's not starting still, right? Nope. He should be starting. There's no reason why he isn't. And I don't even know who the head coach of the Hornets is, but
James Borrego.
If he doesn't start, LaMelo by the midseason break they're giving the league, then there are going to be a lot of people calling for his head, to get taken out of that head coaching job, because LaMelo has shown he's practically the front runner. He's run away with Rookie of the Year. There's no reason why you don't start him, considering he's your future. That's just bonkers to me.
I'm going to say this. Don't sleep on Emmanuel quickly for Rookie of the Year if he gets the minutes and starts. That's all I'm going to say. Don't sleep on quickly because he's balling. Let's see. Somebody asked a question. Y'all think Christian Wood would put up similar stats if he stayed in Detroit? If Jeremy Grant could do it, then Christian Wood could do it. That's what I'm going to say.
I could see it. I think, it's an interesting situation. What would the contract have looked like? What would Detroit have done with the rest of their offseason? Because I know then they went out and they brought in Plumlee and Jahlil Okafor. So I don't know if they were planning on making it like this competition with Jeremy Grant. Would they have spent that money elsewhere? So I think a lot of different questions go into it. But Christian Wood was improving a lot last year as a player. I do think in a way going to Houston helped him, finally reach that potential. But I still think he would have had a great year this year no matter where he was.
100% agree. I mean, we saw towards the end of last season, he was really, starting to pick it up towards the end. So, I mean, you could have put him anywhere where, you give him room to develop and he would have been putting up the same numbers.
And two questions that Ashton Vega asked. He asked, how far do we think the Blazers can go this season? And who do we think will be in the finals this year? Well, for the Blazers question, I think they can go as far as the Western Conference Finals if everything clicks. I think they have the talent to do it. And I think it's the Lakers and Nets in the finals this year. No doubt about it. I think the Lakers and the Nets will face in the finals. And James Harden will get his championship.
As for the Blazers, I would probably agree with Joel. I think that the furthest they can go is the Western Conference Finals. Depending on how things shake out, I can't really see them getting past the Lakers or even the Clippers, just because I think the Clippers are playing great basketball right now. But other than that, other than those two teams, I think they could compete with anybody in the Western Conference. After that, I think the Western Conference is pretty wide open, honestly. But those two teams, I think, are head and shoulders above everybody else in the West right now. Maybe the Nuggets, I think, would be in between the Lakers and Clippers and the Trailblazers, but I think they could compete with anybody but those two teams. So I would say Western Conference Finals, maybe Western Conference semis if things shake out, unfortunately for them. And then the finals question right now, I think you'd be hard pressed to say anybody but the Lakers and the Nets. The Lakers have looked incredible this season despite having such a short offseason. And you look at that team, they're so difficult to guard. Who has the personnel to guard LeBron James and Anthony Davis, along with all those other weapons they added this offseason? And then in the Eastern Conference, the Nets are showing with James Harden, they could figure out a way to work this offense. It remains to be seen how Kyrie is going to slot in, but he's another great player who seems like he wants to win a championship. I think they're going to figure out a way to make it work. And I don't think Sean Marks is done yet. And they just beat the Bucks tonight. And granted, it's 1 game regular season. I think in a 7-game series, although it would be a lot of fun to watch, I think the Nets would come out on top. So I would say the Nets would be my Eastern Conference favorite this year, which would make a Nets-Lakers finals, which I think would be incredible to watch.
Yeah, for the Blazers, I mean, we saw last season, there's outright firepower they're able to put out, but they can only go as far as the Western Conference Finals just because no one in the West are beating the Lakers. There's no one getting past the Lakers. So, I mean, I'm gonna agree with the both of y'all. Farthest they could go is the Western Conference Finals. For the finals as a whole, I mean, I think the Lakers will have some smooth sailing getting to the finals. In the East, I think it will be in a similar fashion for the Nets. I mean, we have to wait to see how Kyrie, translate into that. Hopefully, he doesn't mess up the great chemistry that is already within, that team. And I mean, in terms of that final series, I think it's a definite. It's going to Game 7. I think each team is going to win their home games. And depending on who gets Game 7, I don't want to say that'll be the winner, but I don't want to say I don't want to pick a winner right there just because that's nearly impossible. These are two of the greatest teams to ever be assembled, that we're seeing. So I'm not going to pick a winner, but I think we should all just be happy to see the Nets and Lakers, in a 7-game series.
And this is a question from Get OKC a title. What do you guys think about the Kevin Porter situation, and who do you think should pick him up? I haven't been really looking into the Cleveland situation. I know that he was mad that Torian Prince got his locker. Uh, I don't know what I think about that, to be honest. I don't have a formed opinion. I just know that he wants out. And if he wants out, this is an easy pick for me. Golden State should pick him up. I think that he can do similar things that Kelly Oubre can do right now. They're both lefties, so that's cool. And Kevin Porter is a really good young player. And if he gets out of Cleveland via trade or he just gets released, wherever he goes to, if it's a good situation, he's going to be really good.
Yeah, I'll say this. I think in regards to who should pick him up, it would be smart for a lot of, I would say, non-contenders to pick him up, because I think he's a little bit of a project, just because off the court, he's had issues stemming back to his college days, and I'll get to that a little bit more in a few seconds, but he needs a little bit of work. He has all the potential in the world to be a great player in this league, but he's got to mature off the floor. And I think in a good system, he can reach that potential. But this is a perfect example of what has happened his whole career. When he was at USC, he was kicked off the team for off the court issues. This past offseason, the reason why he was not using his locker to this point in the year was because he caught a weed charge and a gun charge. You can't do that if you're in the NBA. It's unacceptable. Now, if you were to tell me that he was injured and that's why he was missing time and they gave his locker away, okay, I totally get it. That's disrespectful. But when you put yourself in a position to miss time, they have every right to take your locker. And the reason he was so upset is because they moved him from the more preferable lockers to the wall lockers where the bottom of the bench guys and the rookies go. But when you put yourself in a position to not be out there for the team has every right to punish you for that. And when you're bringing in a respected veteran, I would say Torian Prince is a respected veteran at this point in his career. When you're bringing in a guy like him, you have to understand that you've put yourself in that position. You did that to yourself. And so I think that this was just another sign of his immaturity. But if he can go to a good situation where he can grow as an individual before a player, I still think he has a lot of potential.
I think there's a big risk that goes in with Kevin Porter Jr., but given what happened to Karis LeVert this past week, I think Indiana picking him up wouldn't be that bad of a choice.
That's a great.
I think Indiana, losing him, I'm not going to say you get a carbon copy because Kevin Porter Jr. is nowhere near Karis LeVert, but it's at least, a nice pickup for that forward guard position. Obviously, the only thing I have against it is that Indiana is such, like a cool program. Like you never hear anything coming out of Indiana, about drama. Obviously, something little with Oladipo last season, but he was still able to ball out. So listen, I think wherever he decides to go, he's going to have to, man up and, just cut the nonsense. But given the circumstances around Indiana and Karis LeVert, I think the Kevin Porter Jr. release would make sense for them the most.
Joel, Ronnie, somebody asked this question. I think this is an easy question for all of us. Who's the better QB when healthy, Deshaun or Dak Prescott? It's Deshaun Watson. It's not even a question.
I actually like Dak a lot. You have to be outside of your mind to take Dak Prescott over Deshaun Watson. I think Deshaun Watson is a top 3 quarterback in the league. Like if you were redrafting the league, I think he would go number 2 behind Patrick Mahomes. So I don't even think this is a question. And I love Dak, but I think he's a little bit underrated, but it's not even close.
Yeah. Deshaun Watson. I don't even know what more to say about that.
He also asked now, Rodgers or Brady then? Rings aside. I think like talent-wise, it's Rodgers, but it's close. I think if you put rings aside, it's close, but I think in this type of debate, you can't put rings aside. So because of that, I'm going to go Brady.
Yeah, if you're saying rings aside, just strictly speaking on talent, I would say Rodgers. But if you're looking at like who's a greater quarterback, it's Tom Brady. Tom Brady's the greatest quarterback ever, and it's hard to put rings aside, but if you're looking pure talent, Rodgers is the guy.
Yeah. I'm always a big fan of Aaron Rodgers. Loved Aaron Rodgers growing up. I mean, Tom Brady, the fact that he's been able to do what he's been able to do for so long obviously speaks volumes to his career. But talent-wise, Aaron Rodgers is, one of the greatest quarterbacks we've ever seen talent-wise. He's made throws that we've never seen before. He's been able to develop players, as well. So I think for me, I'm going to pick Aaron Rodgers above Tom Brady just because I don't want to say I'm still not sold on Tom Brady being a system QB. I mean, that's still an argument that I, battle with from time to time, but I still think Aaron Rodgers, like you can put Aaron Rodgers anywhere and he'll be able to succeed. Any receiver, he'll be able to succeed. Can you do the same for Tom Brady? That's kind of up in the air.
So right now we're about to answer our last question. We appreciate all you guys that have been asking questions. You guys have been really active in the chat. This is gonna be the last question, and Leo, you're gonna get the prize for this one. Beside the Bucks, which team in the East can compete with the Brooklyn Nets? And I think nobody. Nobody can compete with the Brooklyn Nets. Nobody. The Bucks, you don't even have to guard Giannis. The Boston Celtics, I don't trust them in the series against the Nets. Philly, maybe Embiid gives you problems. But outside of Philly, Boston, and Milwaukee, who is a threat to the Nets? Those are the biggest threats, and I don't think they're a threat to the Nets at all.
The only teams that I would maybe say, I mean, the Bucks would be the number one team, you would say, and you saw what happened tonight. Granted, it's one regular season game, but beyond that, maybe the Sixers, just because of Joel Embiid, would be a tough assignment. And, they're a big team. Ben Simmons is a big point guard. Tobias Harris, they have size for sure. And I just don't think they have the offensive firepower to match up with the Nets personally. Maybe the Heat, but Bam Adebayo would have to have the series of his life. And again, I just don't. So where are they getting the offensive fire? Tyler Hero would have to take a ginormous leap by that point in the season. The Bucks maybe because they have Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday, Giannis. That's defensively and offensively, they've been the best team in the league this season statistically, and defensively they have some good personnel. So I'd say maybe the Bucks, but I don't really. The Celtics, like they have similar personnel to the Nets, but the Nets players are much better, like talent wise. So I don't really think they have a shot. The only teams that I would even give a glimmer of hope to would be the Bucks, the Sixers, and maybe the Heat.
Yeah, when I think of, who can really take down the Nets, considering we don't really have, good rim protection, it's got to be a team with a sufficient big man. And Jack, you brought up the Heat. Bam Adebayo, I don't think he's at that level yet to really, kind of take over a game, in a way, especially when you got Jimmy Butler on the other end. But I mean, if anyone's been watching the Nets for the past couple of years, Jimmy Butler is a net killer. I don't know what it is. He goes God mode whenever he goes up against the Nets. I mean, that's one take. But even then, they have no shot of competing with the Nets. The only team I'm legitimately concerned for. Earlier in the season, I was concerned about the Celtics just because the Celtics are, they're the Celtics. They've gone to the Eastern Conference Finals. Forgot how many times in the past season, but they've made it on a consistent basis. But that Christmas Day game shut out any doubts I had. I'm not worried about them anymore. But the Sixers and Joel Embiid, if Joel Embiid has a good enough series, they can take the Nets to 7 games. And who knows what can happen in that game 7. So honestly, the only hope I'll give to are the Sixers, really. And it's only because Joel Embiid would have to have the series of his life, the game of his life, attacking the post and, hitting his shots from outside the arc when he's given to him. So I'm only looking at Philly for the Nets.
So that was going to be our last question, but Serge wants us to answer this last one. And because he is a super fan of this podcast, we'll give him the benefit of the doubt this time. So Serge, his question is, or it's not even a question, it's Joel, Ronnie, and Jack. Give me a spicy NFL hot take, and I think that's what it is. Just give him a spicy NFL hot take.
Joel, you want to go first on this one?
Yeah, I got to think about this one, bro.
So for me, okay, I think people that view the podcast know that I think Tua Tagovailoa is not going to be a great quarterback. I don't know if that's a spicy hot NFL take right now, but let me just think this is a spicy one. Jameis Winston will revive his career with the New Orleans Saints and Sean Payton as well. That's my hot take.
This is tough. We really got put on the spot with this one. I think the Rams move on from Jared Goff this offseason. And I think it will shock a lot of people, but I think it will 100% be the right decision. I am not high on Jared Goff at all. And I think that he's holding the Rams back from being a Super Bowl contender.
I saw earlier today that the relationship between McVay and Goff has kind of gone south. So that's not out the window completely. I mean, that could definitely happen. For me, he wants spicy hot. So, I'll give him a good one. Wherever Deshaun Watson goes, Dolphins, Jets, Pats, San Francisco, whatever, he will be the league MVP next season. No matter where he goes, he will take home the league MVP.
I would buy stock in that opinion.
You know what? Because you guys did a hotter take, I'll do a hotter take too. My take is that the Raiders will move on from Derek Carr this season via trade, or they'll cut him. That's my hot take too. That Derek Carr is he's not going to be with the Raiders next season.
Sergio loved our answers, apparently. He's very intrigued by our answers in the chat.
So LGRW said, how often do you go live and take questions? This is our first time doing it. We're going to start doing it more. We don't have an exact schedule. I thank you, Get OKC a Title, for clarifying that. You did a great job in doing that. We're just going to go live randomly and take in questions from viewers. We're going to take in callers and stuff. So, yeah, just tuned in for that. We're always going to have like a schedule. So, to give you guys time to know when we're going to go live and stuff. I'll probably announce it on the community like chat where I create posts. But, yeah, I mean, this was the very first time doing it. I appreciate you, Ronnie, for pulling up. It was amazing. You were amazing.
Hey, man, I've been fans of you guys. I met Joel over the summer. Been watching the Pick a Side podcast ever since. Y'all do great stuff, man. For real. It's not me sucking up to you. For real. Y'all do some great stuff. I'm trying not to curse right now. Y'all know that. But really, I appreciate everything y'all do. I appreciate the opportunity. Anytime you need someone to come on, bro, just hit my line. I'll be open for it. I appreciate you on. I appreciate the love, Coach Salah. I appreciate it, man.
Ronnie, it was great meeting you, man. You were great, really.
Yeah, appreciate it, guys. Jack, Joel, y'all too. And River, I know River's cool too. If he's watching or if y'all let him know for me, he's awesome too, man. I appreciate all y'all.
Nah, yes, sir. Yeah, like I met Ronnie in the summer because we both go to Seton Hall. He's been at Seton Hall for a while. I just transferred there, and he's at the radio station WSOU. He has a shirt on right now. And yeah, I met him, and everybody there has been cool. I'm shouting out Wilner, Michael Daly, Jory, Heaven. They all have been cool. If I didn't mention somebody, I'm sorry. But yeah, Ronnie's been somebody, man. He's been super supportive. He's a great dude. He knows the sport. So whenever we need somebody on here, he's going to be on here. So chat, get used to him. You guys are putting the GOAT symbol in the chat. You guys are spamming it. So we appreciate you guys. And once again, Ronnie, thank you for being on. We appreciate you. And guys, thanks for watching. We'll let you know when we do this again.